This is John McAllister with Around the State, my podcast. Today, we're going to talk with an old friend of mine. He began his career in Shaker Heights in Cleveland, I think 30 years ago. We worked together. Then he went to Minnesota. His wife had a good job, and then he went out to Arizona, and he's been a head football coach, assistant coach, and he's really done well. He also, I forgot, made one trip he's at Mason High School. He was a head football coach there before he left for Minnesota. Dave Sedmak is a good friend. He has a tremendous amount of wisdom, and he has coached some really, really, really good players over the years. Looking forward to talking with him, and he should be up in just a minute. Good morning to my good friend Dave Sedmak, who lives in Arizona. And he's a former, as I said earlier, he's a former Ohio guy. He's a Cleveland guy. And many, many moons ago, he was a Shaker Heights guy. And that's where I met him a long, long time ago. Dave Sedmak, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful, John.
Living the dream, you said.
Living the dream. That's right.
Okay, before we do anything else, I have to show you something. You have nothing on me, okay? You know that?
Wow, look at
Did you
that.
see that? I am a member of the Greater Cleveland Football Coaches Association Golden Deeds Award
That's beautiful. I just
5
got
years ago.
it award this year.
I know, and then I know that you just got in this year. And you flew in, I think, or whatever you did.
I did.
You were
I
there.
flew in for
And you
the
know, Dave, I completely forgot the date. And then I see it on, I think I saw it on Facebook or someplace, and I could kick myself because I'd love to have been there. And they do a great job.
I do. It was fun. It was a good time. Got lots of old friends I got to see.
Yeah, my goodness, yes. And then I think I probably talked too long, but you know, I it was good. I mean, there aren't many non-football coaches in there, and I'm one of them. So Chuck Kyle has been really good to me.
Well, a lot of the non-football coaches that are in it are people that have done an awful lot for high school football in Cleveland, and you certainly have. So uh, the Golden Deeds Award is for anybody that's helped to advance high school football in Cleveland. And
Right.
shoot, Paul Brown was in it.
Yeah.
Jim Tressel's in it.
I know Coach Tressel was in it. Coach. Okay, well, let's talk. You know, the whole podcast I do centers about around kids and how they can get better in the recruiting process, what they can learn in the recruiting process. And I want to compliment you because we go back to Shaker, and you were one of those guys that I love to see a Saturday afternoon game, mid or noon game, I think it was, or 2 o'clock. It was in there someplace. But the thing that you did with your kids, they respected you, and that sounds silly, but when you talked to them, they looked at you. I can always remember them looking at you when you talked to them, and you were a little bit of a big teddy bear then. I know you didn't show it. I know you could get in their face, but you were so good to them. I think you were ahead of the game relating to kids. So tell me, Dave, what was your theory or what was your thinking? And I don't know if we can use the word inner city anymore. I don't, they'll fire me, but those were kids that were in the city. And I thought, it was really, really good. And we're talking, what, 30 years ago, roughly. What was the key for you back then?
Well, I think the bottom line is loving them, and loving them includes caring about them, and part of caring about them includes showing them or teaching them discipline. And, the old saying is kids crave discipline, even though they might not necessarily like it at the time. They appreciate it when they get it. And, because that's what it takes to be successful. You have to create self-control and create goals for yourself and, learn how to sacrifice and all that stuff. And some kids learn it, some kids don't. Coaches certainly teach that, or they can reinforce it if the parents teach it. But that's it, and sometimes they need a pat on the back. Sometimes they need not literally, but a kick in the butt. And they need structure. And then once you do that and they start believing in you, then, and they'll bend over backwards to try to do what you want and also try to become the best they can be.
I totally agree. And I'm glad you used the word structure, because discipline always sounds like and I know we grew up in the same era, the Woody Hayes mold and the Bo mold, and that was a little bit of that. It's starting to change a lot. We're finding out we don't have to practice 20 hours a day, and we don't have to get in kids' faces all the time. And I think those days are gone. But you talked about structure. And I think the other thing is, and I know it's an old cliche, but it holds true. I think until they really do, they got to know you care. Until they listen to you, they got to know you care. And I even got that through the combines and the camps I ran.
Yep.
I mean,
they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Well, that's it. I couldn't remember it, but that's exactly true. And okay, and I think your wife has helped get you to all these places. But then you were in Cincinnati area, and you worked for a good friend of mine named Jim Place, I think.
He's the best. He's the best.
He's still going. He's my age. He's 73.
I know.
He's working with kids in the Cincinnati or in the Dayton area now. And I think he really liked to coach again, but his wife vetoes that, I think.
Well, yeah, we certainly all understand that too.
We do, don't we? Well, tell me, was it Hamilton then?
Yeah, it was at Hamilton. Yeah, my wife had sacrificed for me for a long time so that I could stay at Shaker. I had a really nice setup at Shaker, good thing going. I was the AD and the head football coach. A lot of great people. And then I was after my 25th year at Shaker. My wife had just completed her MBA at Case Western Reserve, and she got offered a job down in Dayton, and she said she really wanted to take it. And I was kind of burned out from doing both AD and football jobs. The snow was getting to me, the whole thing, and I said, let's go.
Kids like?
You had another mix of kids. We had, we had a kid by the name of Charlie Hatcher. His parents were lawyers, or his dad was a lawyer. But then we had a lot of kids that were one parent, inner city type of kids who didn't have a lot of home. And Jim was amazing with those kids. He was absolutely amazing. He got them all to take the SAT, got them all to do camps. He made them sign for the ACT. He did all that. And of course he had kids getting scholarships and never thought it was even possible.
Right.
So, he was amazing. And so Hamilton was a little bit more overall more blue collar than Shaker was. Shaker had a mixture. Hamilton had a mixture, but probably more blue collar.
Then tell me about the move to Mason.
Yeah, so then,
What
like I said,
on the air anyway. No,
well, I had 25 years of teaching, and I needed 5 more years to qualify for retirement. So I needed a
Okay.
teaching job, and that's what I got at Hamilton. Jim and I were the two finalists for that head coaching job, and they gave it to Jim, but they were able to hire me as a teacher to help them, and that was great. Of course, they couldn't pay me all my years, and
Right.
so I was making considerably less than I was back at Shaker. Then the Mason job opened, and I went ahead and put in for it. And, lo and behold, they offer me the job and they give me all my years. So, I couldn't pass that up.
No.
And I was the head coach there for 3 years. And then I needed then my wife got offered a job in Minnesota. So I needed one more year to be able to retire. So I hung out at Mason one more year without coaching. And then my wife and I were each going back and forth between Minnesota and Dayton. And then finally, in the end of February of that year, I was able to retire and then move up to
Right.
Minnesota with her.
Right. And then you didn't coach in Minnesota, did you?
I was not a head coach. I was planning on being an assistant for the rest of my career, or coaching at a D3. I was actually offered an assistant job at Augsburg College in Minneapolis, and then Edina High School, which is a big suburban high school in Minneapolis. They were looking for an offensive coordinator, and the guy that was the head coach happened to be a defensive guy, and he needed a guy to sort of be the head coach of the offense. It was like a perfect setup for him and I, and it really worked well. My second year there, we actually beat the number 13 team in USA Today, Eden Prairie High School, and we finished the regular season ranked number 1 in the state. We ended up losing in the quarterfinals of the state playoffs. But it was a fantastic season, and it was a lot of fun. But then my wife got offered a job in Arizona, and if you ever experienced Minnesota winters, Arizona sounds heaven. And so we moved down there, and of course I was looking for an assistant's job again, and I was an assistant for a couple years at a place called Desert Mountain High School, where Mark Andrews was actually a senior that year. He plays for the Ravens now. And Kyle Allen was also a senior. He plays for the Redskins, or the Washington football team now.
Yeah.
And I was an assistant there for a couple of years, and then the head coach got fired. Of course, we were all looking for something to do, and so I was hired at a small charter school as the head coach. Which again, I wasn't teaching, so that it was still sort of a part-time job, even though it was a head coach position.
Right.
And then in June of the following year, right before the next season started, the new head coach at Desert Mountain left to go back to Iowa, and they were scrambling to hire a guy. And some of the parents there, who I knew from my couple years there, reached out to me and saw if I was interested. So I went ahead and put in for that. And of course, I knew I was going to have to go back and be a teacher again if I was going to be the head coach. And that's what I did. And I ended up doing that for 3 years. We had it's an interesting place. We had some good players, real good players, but not the number, and not the big kids that a lot of big schools have. And so we had some decent teams.
Well, tell me, Dave, let's go real quickly. Let's go back to Minnesota. What's the very briefly, what's a Minnesota football player? What are they like? We know what Ohio's like. What's Minnesota like?
Generally, you're going to find the same kind of kids. You're going to have more of the big physical linemen, and not as many of the real fast athletic kids. You'll still have some of those. I mean,
What's their
Larry
attitude like for football?
love football. Look,
Do they?
here's the difference. They love football. Football is very big in Minnesota. You don't hear a lot about it. Arizona is kind of the opposite. You're going to get a lot more of the athletes. You're not going to get as many of the lineup types. Arizona is really churning out quarterbacks right now.
Right.
In fact, the two quarterbacks in the Big 12 championship game and the two quarterbacks in the Pac-12 championship game last year were all from high schools in the Phoenix Valley. One of them, of course, was Mike Pitt from Desert Mountain, King Slovis, who's the quarterback at USC.
What is the quarterback? Oh, okay. Yeah, I got
And
you.
then, of course, Brock Purdy, who's the quarterback at Iowa State, was from that area.
I really like him, by the way.
Oh, yeah. And then Spencer Rattler, who's predicted to be the number one draft choice, was from the Valley. We got to play him 3 times when I was at Desert Mountain. And then Tyler Shuck, who transferred from Oregon to Texas Tech, is from the Valley also. So,
okay, what gives Arizona an advantage? What gives those states out there where you are an advantage in football?
2 things. Number one, the weather. They can get out. Quarterbacks can get outside and throw around. There are a lot of former college and professional players that choose to live here when they're done. A lot of them have become instructors, private instructors. So, there's wide receiver instruction. There's also, I mean, of course, that's everywhere now, but it's easier when you can get outside to it.
Heaven's sakes.
Yeah, and then that's the one. And then the other one is we have spring football out here. And that's a chance for college coaches to see the kids in person, which Ohio doesn't have that luxury. They can see them, but they can't watch them play practice football. And, during spring ball, we'd have a parade of college coaches coming through to watch. And it wasn't full padded spring football like Florida and Texas have. But still, you could see kids out there throwing and catching and running, and it makes a difference.
Yeah, it does. I have mixed emotions about spring football in Ohio.
Yeah, it's different. It's earlier in the spring sports end earlier in Arizona because they can start earlier.
Right.
They start in February and they can end at the end of April. And then spring football is usually at the beginning of May, whereas in Ohio, spring sports have to go right up until the end of May.
Right. I think that every athlete should be required to go to a strength training class all 3 years of high school. And I also believe that coaches can, and I think it's coming to this, coaches can work with kids all year round. Like if I want to take a kid out and quarterback and have him throw to 2 receivers, I can do that.
And we can do that in Arizona too, by the way. Most high schools in Arizona have what they call a football class, where you have your football players in class every day through the school year, where you're obviously your strength training, but you can also get out there and practice if you want to, because it's a class. You can't have equipment, but you can get out there and teach your system. And a couple of years ago, Arizona made a rule, because of so many of the private soccer teams and the baseball teams allowed high school coaches to work with their kids because they were losing them to the private clubs. And and those private coaches and the private clubs in general don't have as much care about the kids as they do about making money. And whereas the coaches in high school in generally are trained as teachers and do have the kids' best interest more at heart.
I totally agree. In fact, I think it's starting to do a number on girls' sports because the summer coaches, these private coaches are treating these kids like they don't have the same they're trying to make them all men, I think, all boys, and I don't necessarily agree with it. So I don't know.
It's it's the
What would
problem
you?
with those private coaches, those private travel teams is, they don't, in many cases, they don't have the oversight that high school coaches do by the state associations.
Right, and I think it's all, and it probably, I'm guessing it should be, but it's more individual than it is team in the private sometimes, and
It
unless
is.
unless it's a team, school team, or I don't know, something like that.
It does. I mean, you do have the private coaches that just do the private training, but even like the AAU teams, they don't practice a lot. They play
Yeah,
a million games, and so
yeah,
I think that's what's killing American basketball, and I think that's why so many Europeans are now dominating in the NBA because kids are playing AAU ball and not working on fundamentals.
yeah.
They're working on dunks and they're working on showcases, whereas the guys in Europe are still doing a lot of
fundamental stuff through their teenage years.
It's true. Okay, I really, really appreciate you taking the time. Let's finish up with, uh, let's, let's spend just a couple of minutes on the football stuffing that you're doing now. Okay,
Okay.
you have something in front of you? If not, that's okay. Just
Yeah. No, I'm good.
maybe there are people want to send, let's just do this, Dave. There might be people in Ohio that send you footballs because you're getting it from all over. So promote that program, what it is, and what you're doing with it.
Okay. Started out when I was at that small charter school. We had a bunch. The budget was small, and we had a bunch of old footballs laying around there holding air. And I remembered back to all the places I ever coached. We always had some balls like that, and there wasn't a whole lot you could do with them. And so,
I found out there were places you could send them to get them fixed. But then, I had my own old award footballs that weren't holding air anymore, and I said, I want to. I went online and learned how to do it. I learned how to repair those footballs, how to replace the bladder and the laces, and I sent out a tweet one day. So when I reached out to some local guys, I said, I know how to do this now. It's a hobby of mine. If you need some balls repaired, let me know. And one local coach said, "Hey, coach, I have 9 footballs. Can you do it for me?" So I did the 9 for him, and I tweeted out a picture of them one day. And then the next thing you know, I mean, it's like going viral. I'm getting guys from all over the country asking me to do it for them. And then I did a big order of like 14 for a guy in Georgia, and I did an order of 19 for a guy in Texas, and posted those. And I mean, it's just going crazy.
Well,
I've had
you know,
balls sent from 20
you're
different states
well
now.
respected in Ohio and all that. If people in Ohio, what's the process? Just box up the balls and send them to you, or what's the process?
I recommend them message me on Twitter.
Okay.
Um, and then what I do is I explain the process to them. I give them the address on where to send them. Um, if I charge $15 a ball plus shipping, and so they can
How much a ball?
15.
Okay. Well, Dave, I
Okay.
really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time and what have you learned about kids in all these years, 4 states or 3 states? And what have you learned about football players? Give me top 5 things you've learned in no certain order.
Every kid, whether it's no matter his socioeconomic status, uh, wants you to care about him. Number one. wants to be able to trust you. Kids is, the kids essentially haven't changed per se. The way they've been raised has changed, which is what altered the necessity for us to alter the way that we coach them. Can't be on as they used to be because parents aren't as tough on them as they used to be.
Yeah.
Football's still football. Kids, kids watch football on TV, and so that's where they learn get a lot of their habits, whether good or bad. A lot of times we still have to correct the bad habits because of the bad habits they learn on TV. It still comes down to blocking, tackling, protecting the football. It's great if you throw the ball 80 times a game, score 100 points, but you're going to have trouble stopping teams if you do that. And, so you still need to have a balanced offense. You have to be able to run the ball well. And the best teams at every level still do. And in high school especially, your defense is not going to be able to stop a good running team if your own team doesn't run the ball well.
Right. That's good.
That's about it.
Good. You're getting into fly. I really appreciate what you've said about kids and things like that. Okay.
Yep.
And I really appreciate you taking the time, and you're going to go out and play golf. Or that was canceled, wasn't it? But
yeah, we had a problem with an air conditioner here in our house, and in Arizona, when you have a problem with your air conditioner, it becomes an emergency. It's kind of like the heater in the wintertime in Ohio.
Okay. Dave, thank you very much, Coach. I appreciate it.
All right, no problem. Great seeing you, buddy.
Thank you.